when you try to record a video and your dog wants to play fetch. Well, today I'm hanging out in my studio and I'm going to show you how to throw a cylinder on the potter's wheel. So hopefully you'll get some tips and tricks to help you pull the clay a little bit more successfully. All right, so I'll start with this cone shape this time. And then just make sure it's really good and sealed. If you're worried about that, you could just drape your finger here and seal it. I always support my hand as I do that. But if you feel like you got a really good suction when you press the clay down or when you've smashed it or wiggled it towards the center, it should be good. Then you just add a little bit of water, cone it up, then we're going to push that clay down into the palm of our hand. This is just a pound of clay, so it's really easy to just kind of undercut your pinkies here and then push that down into your palms back here. You can also rotate forward with your palm here, and then you can chop on the top. But be really careful not to karate chop straight down and make it really flat across the top. I find that centrifugal force then becomes your enemy. You want to keep this back edge rounded, which then will make your whole pot rounded too. So here we go, chop. You just kind of, it's like cutting a piece of cake or something. You start in the center and you just shift your wrist down. Be careful not to bend too much back here. But again, with a pound of clay, I can just chop and fold using those muscles in your palms. Just like so. I kind of squeeze it up, press it down until it settles. Okay. Then I just support my thumb as it dives right in. I feel like I'm close to the bottom. Again, you could stop and use your needle tool and check your distance here. That's about 1/4 of an inch because I'm not going to trim these. Then I just use my thumb to compress and flatten the bottom. You could take your sponge and press straight down and move it in towards the center a little bit too. You don't want to push so hard you put a hole in the bottom. I have seen people do that before. So that first lift, it's hardly any effort. You just push on this back side and it'll pop your clay right up. And then you get under this clay here and you get a hold of that clay and you bring it up like a wave. It's like the wave kind of comes from the bottom and it flips up and becomes your new top. So we're going to push to get under the clay, counter pinch, so your left hand is slightly above your right and you come straight towards your face. Lighten up your pressure as you get to the top, and I let my fingertips come all the way together, and it does kind of compress this lip. So when you're thinking about your pot, you know, vocabulary wise, this is your lip and this is your foot of your pot. So as I come up, I let my fingertips just gently touch each other at the lip, and that compresses it. Your clay loves to be hugged, so compress and hug it anytime. It just helps. All right, so last lift here, I'm gonna make sure there's no thick bits of clay down here that I need to move. And then I'm gonna just keep my fingers magnetized to each other as I straighten that wall out to the width that I want. I'm gonna get any extra water out of here, rinse and dry my sponge. Do that one more time because there's still some down in here. And then I take my triangle tool here and just rotate it away from myself by putting this tip on the base and just rotate away a little bit. And then it depends on how I feel. Sometimes I just, without having to flip my tool, I'll rotate it forward, rotate it back, and then just use that straight edge to straighten out this wall. And if your pot is a little bit taller than your tool, like this one is, you just come up with it. You just kind of keep your finger up against there, and then you just kind of flow right up. Last step would be to use that web of your finger at noon, or you could do it right here at 6 o'clock with your left hand if you're throwing right-handed. Bring your fingertips together and kind of shape it with the pointer finger. But it's super easy to just let gravity be your friend and rest right there. Do a river of water here. Take your wire tool and pull it straight through. Over time, if your water does get sludgy, it makes this step difficult. So I'm going to push that into my hand. I'm going to rotate it back on itself. And if you were looking from up above, it did kind of warp it like a little football shape. But it's no big deal. You just, once you put it on the board, you can jiggle it from the base and it has memory of where it was. So now if you put it on your board and you're like, oh, I warped it, and you started attacking the top of your pot, you're stretching all those clay particles like a rubber band, and it's never going to snap back. So just jiggle it, talk to it real nice, and it'll be just fine. A lot of the times I'll do a whole board and then I'll go back to that board when I go to set it on the table, and I'll look over the top and then just from the base, just kind of jiggle the bottoms of them. You know, if it's oval and pushing out on one side, I'll put my fingers on that same side that it's pushing out at the base, just kind of tap it just a little bit. You don't hit it, but you just kind of say, hey, little buddy, you do it straighten up there. And it does every time. A lot of times if you're just gentle, the clay will bounce back. It's when you overhandle it and you stretch it, then you've created a whole new shape, and it's not going to remember because it has a new memory of being warped. So just take some finesse and practice. So here's a round one that was wedged. Again, you could put your fingers here and seal it, or you can just chop and fold. So I kind of hugged it up like that, and then I'm going to push it down. And it really, my pressure is on this back little section, maybe from like 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And I just push down with those thumb muscles. So chop and fold. And I'm going to open it up. And pull. And just kind of hold in this corner. If you're trying to do a cylinder, you want it to be undercut a little bit. So I go to that corner and then I just kind of hook my fingertips. I really focus on the tips of my fingers. And what that does is it undercuts it under here. And then physics, it just wants to make it shoot back up into a triangle shape later. So anytime you're trying to do a cylinder, you need to make sure your corner is undercut a little bit. Just taking my thumb here and compressing it. You could use your fingers too, it doesn't matter. Whatever's comfy cozy and that you're supporting your hands and you're not twisting them in some way that's going to cause damage with your hands later. All right, first lift. I can even have my hand over here and just gently press. This compresses it, takes off any extra sludge. Ooh, that tickle. Excuse me. So again, just kind of push. That'll pop your clay straight up. Then you can rest your sponge here. So that's really all I'm doing. My left hand is supporting when I do have my hand in there. So we'll do that again. I'm just pushing from the outside to compress that clay. And my left hand wasn't really doing anything. So now I'm going to get under the clay, counter pinch with that left hand, that inside hand. If you're throwing with your right hand, it would be your left. It'd be opposite. If your wheel was spinning counterclockwise and you were throwing with your left hand. So you're going to push, counter pinch, and lift. And you're only pinching just enough to hold on to that wave. Lighten up your pressure as you get to the top. Take out any extra water, compress your bottom again to prevent cracking. We'll use this triangle tool again. This one had some little air bubbles too, so I might trim the top of this one. It's a little funky. I'm going to trim this one with my wire tool. So you'll go in at 3 o'clock and then just spin slowly. That'll trim your top off. And just finesse that lip. Sometimes if you've pushed too hard here, You might have to go back in and just look at the profile of that pot. If it's flaring out, go ahead and address it now. If you don't love your pot now, you're not going to love it later. It's not like it magically changes shapes on you. All right, there you have it. 2 cylinders, super speedy. There's that dog who's tapping throughout the studio today. But that's okay. I hope you have a great time trying out the potter's wheel, or maybe this was just therapeutic for you. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe and share with your friends and pottery studios all over the place.